Daniel, why don't we just start with a little bit about where you came from and how you got here?
Well, I'll say that this movie meant a lot to me because the Doris Day, Rock Hudson comedies were the first movies I ever saw as a kid and what made me want to be a set designer and costume designer. So getting this job was such a gift. And I have to give credit to our line producer, Patty Cullen, who I had worked with, the production designer and I, on this very small movie in Canada. And she said this movie was coming up. And she slipped us the script quite early. So I went in for my interview and had designed the whole movie and done all the sketches. And they hired me. And it was a fantastic job. We shot it. We wanted it to have the complete authenticity of a completely fake Doris Day, Rock Hudson comedy, because I loved those movies as a kid. When I was small, my mom would just drop me off at the movie theater at 7 years old and pick me up 4 or 5 hours later. And I had seen all of these movies, and I noticed the costumes, I noticed the acting, and it was something for me to, when I got this movie, I was more than happy.
And Peyton Reed just loved what you did and said you were put on this earth to do this film. You had a wonderful collaboration with both Peyton and
Andrew, the production designer. Yeah, we had the best time. The red vest matches the red of the wall. When Barbara goes into her new apartment, the upholstery on the sofa is the same color as her suit. And if you notice that suit, we're very proud of it, that pink suit. We embroidered the plaid on the suit so it matches all the way around rather than finding a plaid fabric. And it was so lucky when we first started, my friend Patty was like, you cannot afford to make all the clothes on this movie. You don't have that budget. And we just begged, borrowed, and stole. We have Don Hook here, who made a lot of the clothes, made a lot of Vicky's clothes, and the astronauts, and stewardesses, and my friend Emily Asayag, who was the head dressmaker for Bob Mackie, she was working out of her house, and she made all of the evening clothes. And John David Ridge made the daytime clothes. And we had Michael Charaschek, and he made a bunch of the clothes. He was a person in our office. And we shot the movie all on sound stages, except for 2 days at the backlot of Universal. I remember there was a movie called The Art of Love, which I loved as a kid. And it's really not that great a movie, but the costumes are fantastic. And I remember talking to the costume designer who I was working with, and I said, oh, and it's all set in Paris, and you shot in Paris. He goes, no, we didn't. We shot at the backlot, Universal. As, you know, a 7-year-old, I thought, Paris. So we wanted to have that. And we did the thing because my old bosses, they could watch a movie from the 60s, like that was shot in Hollywood. They could name all the extras. And so we used the same extras in every scene, which I thought would be noticeable. And it's not at all noticeable. So I do it all the time. If there's an extra I like, it's like, yeah, they could be in this scene too. No one's going to notice. So it was a great fun, and it was all of the actors had dressing rooms, no trailers, so they would all come out of their rooms and see each other, and we had the best time. And I'd like to give all the actors little things like David Hyde Pierce, when he's going to seduce her, we lined his jacket in this vintage print, and it's all little foxes. And it just made him happy, to see that thing. And yeah, it was great. And we have some of the people that were here. Linda Henriksen, who was our wardrobe supervisor.
Stand up.
And sitting right next to her, Robin. And my good friend Namrose Buckman, who I had gone to college with, came, and she was in charge of dressing all the extras. And she did an amazing. I was so lucky that she could come on.
Nan has been with Daniel for a long time and actually did the background for Saving Mr. Banks.
As well, yes. And Ford versus Ferrari.
Yeah. And the exquisite detail, the meticulous attention for all the costumes. I'm stunned. And how long did you have, if you're making all those costumes, because Renee had 100 costumes.
No, she didn't have 100
They
costumes.
said that in my
I
review.
know, but it's not true. It was, we didn't have that much time because it was kind of a low budget. And I found some beautiful vintage fabric. My favorite is Ewan has a black and white plaid sport coat where he's sitting at his desk. And I had found that in the underneath piles of stuff at Western Costume. And it had the tag on it that said Lucille Ball. And we just had enough to make that sport coat. Like the little facing is not the same fabric. And it was so great. And it was one of my favorite things was we put that outfit together. And at the last minute, I put yellow socks. And they were, I put the costume in his room, and I'd gone back to our little office, and he comes into the office and he grabs me and kisses me and said, "Oh, those yellow socks! I'm putting my feet up on the desk." So I love when an actor gets something that makes them feel like the character.
All those little nuances really help build that character, and I know you really do pay attention to those details, and all the ladies with the brooches and the attention, even with the astronets, those were hysterical.
Don Hook made them. Harry Rotz at Western Costume made most of the hats, but also Patricia Underwood in New York made all of the straw hats for us, and she did an amazing job. And she was so happy to do it. She said, "Oh, I love 60s.
How much time did you actually have from design to shoot?
I bet 8 weeks.
Wow.
I bet 8 weeks. So it was all hands on deck, as Linda and they can all attest. But it was great.
And how about Renee and you? And they must have just loved their costumes.
They are two of the best people in the world to work with. Matter of fact, to get me approved, I had to meet with Renee's agent and Ewan's agent for them to okay. And I showed them the sketches, and they were like, okay. And I must say, they were not going to shoot it in LA, but part of Renee's deal was that she wanted to be in Los Angeles, and she would only do the part if they shot in Los Angeles. We need some more actors to say things like that. And I'll tell you, Sarah Paulson, it was her first film, and they auditioned 25 different women to play that part. And there were much bigger names, and the studio was very adamant they wanted someone else. And Renee and the director said, "It's got to be Sarah." And she did an amazing job.
Had they worked with Sarah before?
Nope. No, she just blew them away at the audition. She and David got that patter right that they said nobody else could get, that 1960s kind of patter. They tried desperately to convince Doris Day to come down and do a little cameo, but she refused.
That would have been fun. Oh my gosh. Okay, so there's a wonderful story about the taxi cab, checkerboard, and yellow outfits. Can you share that with us?
Oh, well, it was my idea to do that kind of that little montage of them coming in and getting stood up. And we had done the yellow coat and the houndstooth coat, and then they reverse. And I had done the sketches, and everybody had approved them. And I guess the studio looked at the dailies, and I know a friend of mine was in the room with them, and one of our studio execs that was in charge of our picture, she went wild that she hated yellow on blondes because she was a blonde. And they were like, we're reshooting that. And I had to redesign it. And then at the last minute, we didn't reshoot it. And they said it's fine. But it also there was a coat that Sarah wears that had a Mongolian lamb collar and hat. And our producer said, that's the other costume she's not crazy about, so she can't wear it. So she walks in to get fired, and we had this big outfit on, and now she just walks in that dress. So I always look at that scene and I'm like, damn.
But watching her walk away in that dress was amazing. And the fits of everything, the tailoring was extraordinary.
Yeah, we were so lucky. We were so lucky. The other thing is we were going to make a lot of the shoes, but there was a company called Joseph LaRose, and he had a store in Miami. And when he died, they found in the basement 5,000 pair of shoes that hadn't sold from the 60s and the 70s. And a company called Cherry in New York bought them all. So I sent the sketches to Cherry, and they would send us pictures of shoes in Renee's size, which how lucky to get a pair of 60 shoes, like in an 8.5. It's almost, never worn. They also then sold us a bunch of damaged shoes for all the extras. So we lucked out in so many ways. There was like some company on Larchmont, and they were doing a pop-up in this little house, and they had all of this jewelry, and you would buy a bag of jewelry for $10. And there were some amazing earrings that we used on the movie as well. I wish I had kept them.
We wish you had too. So with all of those changes for each character, why did you choose to do so much MO? Made to order.
We wanted it to look like one of those movies from the 60s where they made everything. We certainly didn't make the extras clothes, but we had to make the stewardesses and the astronauts and certain pieces. But we wanted it to look crisp and clean and brand new. I mean, I think David, even that little quote, said it was so, because he had done a movie and he'd worn vintage 60s clothes, and he said, they all smelled.
Well, this is true. So did you have a specific costume that just you, to this day, drool over that you designed and made?
On that, I like them all. I don't really. I mean, I think that's hard to say. I would have said probably that sport coat that Ewan wore, because of just that it was Lucy's fabric. I kept looking at stills of Lucy from movies, and it's like, no, don't see her in that plaid. She might have, rejected it after it was made, but I like the idea. I wish I had saved the tag.
Well, everyone loved the taxi cab scene, and you had fans that were just horrified that the execs wanted to cut it. And one of them observed, wait a minute, I'm literally shocked about the story of the executive wanting these costumes cut. It's like cutting Somewhere Over the Rainbow for the Wizard of Oz.
Well, that seems a bit much, but it's funny. The movie, they did a lot. The advertising people did a lot. We had a boutique at Bloomingdale's, and they had all the windows. And the movie, unfortunately, opened the same day as The Matrix 2, which they thought was counter-programming, but I thought, no, it's about the same. So there became a new appreciation of the movie 20 years later. New York Times wrote a beautiful article about it, and about how it's not really, it's kind of subversive, because the Doris Day movies, he tricks her into falling in love with him. And this is her fooling him. It turned, when she does that speech, and she did that speech in the block in rehearsal, and she didn't miss a beat. So she was amazing. And the person who really loved the movie from the beginning was Richard Brody, the critic from The New Yorker, who talks about the black and white and yellow and said, I had to go home and drink a few brewskis and watch some basketball to confirm my masculinity because I was so obsessed with them in that scene. And he wrote an article 20 years later as well. And in a tribute to Renee, when he reviewed Judy, he said, well, she'll win the Oscar for this movie. And she already won an Oscar. Right year, wrong movie. She should have won the Oscar for Down with Love. Mm-hmm. But the sad thing is that nobody had seen it, but it found a new life on DVD.
And do you want to share the Criterion Collection?
It's now part of the Criterion Collection. And Kate and we did an interview with them. So we're all really proud of that movie. And whenever I see anybody that worked on that movie, we just talk about how much fun it was. And it's the cinematographer, Jeff Cronenworth, who's done most of the David Fincher movies. He goes, you know what? It really annoys me that my wife and daughters, that's still the favorite movie that I've done.
Well, and you've worked with some amazing, amazing directors. Can you share a few names with us? Jay Roach?
I've worked with Jay Roach and Ron Howard. Yeah, the funny thing was I was doing The Alamo and Ron Howard left the project and we shut down and I got to do Down with Love in between us shutting down. It's another producer friend of mine, because I was like, what do I do? Do I stay on The Alamo? She said, just say yes to both and figure it out later. So it worked out perfectly. But the sad thing was we were shooting The Alamo when this movie was coming out and there was a lot of stuff to be involved with that I couldn't because it was like so funny to be talking on the phone about this film while I'm knee deep in mud in The Alamo. About as far away as you could get.
Anybody have any questions for Daniel?
So there's so much physical comedy and in terms of like movement and everything's so fitted. But how did you think about that, Daniel? Because the clothing line it's not conducive to the type of movement that they're doing.
I didn't think about it. And then we found out it's like, what do you mean he's going to pour water all over his tuxedo?
I love the slit up the back of that pink suit. It's rather high. I enjoyed seeing that. That was fun. Any other questions?
How did you get into the industry?
Well, I always wanted to be a set and costume designer. Even as a 7-year-old, and I used to design sets and costumes and I'd make up stories. I went to college where I met my very best friend still to this day. And we all love the same things. And I was mainly a set designer. And when two of my best friends from college and we all moved to Los Angeles, I got a job working for a costume designer and realized, I love working with actors. I love actors. I feel very protective of them because, people say, I could be an actor. And I look at them and I'm like, no, you couldn't. Acting is really hard. I couldn't be an actor. So that's how I got started.
And you also worked with the famous Bob Mackie.
Yes, as a fluke, I got hired for 2 days to do crafts projects. I was linking together pieces of plastic to make G-strings for a Las Vegas show. And it happened to be Bob Mackie's show, and he just happened to be looking for a new assistant. And he hired me with no movie experience at all. Got me in the union, and I never looked back.
And 54 projects later, he's Daniel. Do we have any more questions?
So I love seeing this on the big screen because it felt like watching all of the Doris Day films all mashed together. And I could pick apart, because I know we're both obsessed with Doris Day. If you could pick one, which is your all-time favorite Doris Day movie?
Oh. Well, Pillow Talk's the first. But the second one, maybe it's Move Over Darling, which it's Rock Hudson and he's got the advertising agency, and they're so good. But I liked all the fake ones as well, because we think about this is the same time as Helen Gurley Brown wrote Sex and the Single Girl, which was this sort of 60s, and she started Cosmopolitan magazine. And so like that movie, The Art of Love, which I thought was the cat's pajamas, and it was Ray Aguian was the costume designer, and I got to work with him, and he was the first costume designer's name I ever knew. And that one, it has a scene where we're introduced to Angie Dickinson, and she's just talking on the phone, lying on a sofa, and they cut from her feet and they just travel up her body, and she's wearing a solid beaded backless bell-bottomed jumpsuit, and it's just for the phone call. And I thought, wow, just for that 1 minute scene they made this amazing dress, and that's what we wanted to have in this.
I hear your allusions to Doris Day, but I watched that scene where she walks into her apartment. I went Barbie. And I just wondered if they were influenced by this, because she steps into her boudoir slippers, and the whole stance of her body looks like Barbie. I thought, did they watch this and go, we want that?
I heard something that they had looked at this movie when they were getting ready to do Barbie, but I don't know if that's true. It's so funny. I had a friend who was like a big Barbie fanatic in the 80s. And I asked him, have you seen the movie? And he goes, that's 80s Barbie. I like 60s Barbie. And it's funny because we have the 60s Barbie pink and they have the 80s Barbie pink.
Can you explain that, Daniel?
Well, ours is that paler baby pink, and theirs is that beautiful. And the movie's amazing. The Barbie movie looks so great. And she was fantastic.
We can take one more question. Anyone?
Was there a reference to Marilyn Monroe's movie Let's Make Love? Because I felt like the ending was very similar.
Oh, Let's Make Love? Yeah. Well, yeah, especially like the beaded dress. We use so many references. Balenciaga, Norel, Ray Aguian, Edith Head. Edith Head did, the most amazing movie called What a Way to Go, where it's all about changing costume. Shirley MacLaine changes costume. She's got 100 costume changes in that movie. And that was really, especially the montage scene. It's like, wanted it to be like that.
How many costumes did Brene have?
I think she had like 38. And there's one that didn't make it into the movie. And it was funny because they had sent me these shoes and handbag that were hot pink and bright avocado and had a matching handbag. And so we made an outfit to go with that. And that didn't make it into the movie. There was a scene of her in the beauty shop.
Where are the costumes today?
I think a bunch of them are in stock at Fox, but they took a bunch of them and put them in the Fox archives, which now is, I think, moved over to Disney. So they have them. But I've rented a couple of them just to amuse myself, to be in another film.
Hi, I just want to ask real quick, how much of your original designs changed once you received some of the dead stock and things that were around town that you could get?
Well, we made all the principal costumes, so they didn't really change. We changed some of the designs when Sarah Paulson got cast, better for her body. But other than that, my first sketches are the sketches that we made.
Is there a designer you would done differently these days if you designed the movie these days? I mean,
of course, you would look at things and say, oh, I would do that. I'd make maybe that a little shorter. Maybe have her take her coat off when she's in the dry cleaning shop, because that dress was really pretty underneath and you don't really get to see it. That kind of thing. I would have insisted that they show the back of one of her dresses that we don't really see, and it was all backless with a big bow. I think we had enough budget. I think we had like $200,000, but it was big because we have lots of extras, and the rental costumes always seem more expensive than anything.
Well, I think that concludes our morning, and thank you all so much for coming. And Daniel,
Thank you.